19 or 2000. Boy, I'm back. Today is July the 6th, 19 or 2000. Boy, I'm back too far back. But we've got a World War II veteran and hero here, Don Armstrong, and he joined the Navy early on. He's going to tell all about his experiences. He was at Pearl Harbor, and he's got a great story to tell, and he's going to tell us, and I've known him for a long time, I'm afraid. But anyway, so now we'll turn it over to you, and you can tell us what you want to. Okay.
Well, I don't know whether you're interested in what I told you about John Zeiler and joining with a couple guys from Holyoke or not, but anyway, on October 1st, 1940, two fellows from Holyoke and I joined the Navy, and we met with quite a group in Denver. We were sworn in, and I turned 18 September 30th, so I tried to get in earlier, and that's the quickest I could get in. Anyway, they shipped us to San Diego, and we went to San Diego boot camp, and 6 weeks of really intensive training. In those days, they had, it used to be 3 months. They'd take 3 months to go through training, and they put us through in 6 weeks. And one of the interesting things I was going to tell you about John Zeiler, he weighed 180 pounds and was about 5'10", real strong guy, very good athlete. And I weighed 130, about 5'11", so there's quite a difference in us. We went through 6 weeks of intensive training, and they didn't give us our regular clothes till we finished. And when we finished, I weighed 156, I gained 26 pounds, and John lost 20, he weighed 160. Only 4 pounds
Difference in the two of you.
That's what happened through really hard marching and drilling, hoisting that 9-pound gun around. Anyway, after boot camp, I think my name was John, and we tried to get aboard to Arizona, which he was able to get because his cousin was aboard to Arizona. I was broken-hearted because I wanted to go with him, but I was assigned to Tennessee.
Don, look at me. Look up when you talk.
Later it turned out to be a blessing, really.
Right.
And then jumping to December 6th, 1941, I'd been ashore and got a lot of Christmas presents for my mother and my sisters and my dad. And so I got back, enlisted men had to be back aboard ship at 12:30. And I got out the dock about 10:30, and I was waiting for my whaleboat to come pick me up. And along come John Zeiler off the Arizona. So we sat down and started visiting, and we talked for about an hour. And about an hour later, Bill Donkey from Holyoke come along, and we talked. And we took the last whaleboats back aboard ship at 12:30. And that was the last I saw of John Zeiler, because he was killed the next morning at Pearl Harbor. At Pearl Harbor, I'd mentioned that time I was what they call a mess cook, and I was feeding 20 men. And at the table that morning we visited about how quick we could knock the Japanese out, because we've been out at short range practice, and the Tennessee, believe it or not, was the most accurate ship in the Navy. And when you'd have what they call short-range battle practice, they would grade you on how accurate your guns were. And every gun on our ship, except one, got what they call an E for efficiency. And like some ships only had 2 and 3 E's, where every gun crew except 2 or 3 on our ship didn't get an E, and the only reason they didn't, they fired well enough, but took just a little too long to get all their ammunition off. So anyway, what was I leading to? We were talking about how quick we'd knock the Japanese out. And because there was a lot of talk about war at that particular time. 5 sailors came running through the casemate and they said, "Hey, they're bombing an island over there." And they all hit my soapy water and just slid all away. So I said, "Let's go up topside." I said, "The other fellow was a mess cooker. Let's go up topside and see what's going on." Well, I just got up to the top of these metal ladders, if you call it. I just got to the top and looked out, and a Japanese torpedo plane came in. And luckily, we were tied next to the West Virginia, and that torpedo plane dropped the torpedo and pulled up, and then we could see the big red circles under the wings. And when that torpedo hit the West Virginia, it hit right underneath what we call the honey box. It was a big garbage box. Oh, at least 6, 8 foot long, and a huge box. It just sent it about 60 feet straight up in the air. And we knew what was happening right then. But at the time when we went in the harbor, a few days before, there was actually, they had picked up some submarines on the way in. So we were at battle stations, and then when we went in, they secured, and we put all but 25 rounds of ammunition below deck. And there was all type of 5-inch 25 guns were fired by air pressure. And anyway, we had to get the air pressure going before we could start firing. As soon as we could start firing, and I started to help loading those shells, and those shells were 78 pounds long, and they're about this long, and they had a fuse on the end of them, and you'd stick them into a fuse pot, turn the crank, and that would set the fuse. And in those days, they were set so that they'd go off in 3.2 seconds in peacetime. So they had to break that glass and reset those to 1.8. That's the minimum you could fire them, so that when they go off, they'd explode quicker. But I think most of the shells we fired probably went past a lot of the airplanes, but it did give you a tremendous feeling that we were doing something.
Yeah.
And they did credit us with 3-point-something planes shot down as far as what we actually shot down. It was pretty hard for us to shoot too, because the West Virginia was right next door, so we had to shoot up pretty high, or else we'd be shooting right into
Right.
the airship.
Right.
On the Tennessee, I've been loading those shells, and I just remembered that, they made me a talker in the director when they put me on mess cooking about a month before, or a couple of weeks before. And so,
Now, what is that, a talker and a director?
well, that was these directors, I showed you that the directors are really like range finders.
Okay.
And so I got the word that, my gosh, maybe if I did it in my regular battle station, I might be court martialed. So I said to this other kid, maybe we better find out where they're going to man the directors. So we started to go around, and I was going to go up to find out. And there was a little closet, and I happened to look in that closet, and there was about 9, 10 guys just jammed in that closet. And one of them was my division officer. So I asked him, I said, "Are we going to man the directors?" And he said, "Yes." But he never showed up. But this kid and I went on up, and there was a Marine officer that was the officer of the day that day. So he put earphones on. So we started reporting planes as they come over. So I'm sure that I really got to see probably more than probably, or as much as anybody could have possibly seen of the action that actually happened during Pearl Harbor. Because I was up there pretty high, and I reported all the different planes coming in. We had dive bombers at us. We had torpedo planes, but of course we were lucky because they couldn't hit us with a torpedo, because we were inboard there as a West Virginia. But the Tennessee was hit by two bombs. One of them was a 200-pound bomb that hit just forward of where I was. It was a hit on number 2 turret, and it cracked the turret, which had to later be replaced, or cracked the gun in that turret. And the other was a 14-inch shell that had been converted to a bomb so that it would penetrate. And luckily, when it hit, on the way down, it hit the yard arm, and it stand up at the signal with, and it deflected it enough so that it actually hit and went on. It penetrated, but it didn't blow up. It fizzed off, and it killed 4 men and injured about 36. So we were really, really lucky that we didn't blow up just like the
Arizona, yeah.
And when the Arizona blew up right back of us, it was so black, and black soot and shrub and different things were flying all over. And then you couldn't see anything. You couldn't see the planes. You couldn't see anything for a while. Everything was just so dark and black. But it eventually cleared up. And while I was a talker up there,
So you were telling us,
oh yeah, well, this is, I looked over on West Virginia, and when that bomb hit on our Turk II, a lot of the shrapnel went on up and hit, it actually hit the captain of West Virginia, and he was mortally wounded. And I looked over and I could see a lot of bad things were happening. Their ship was on fire all around there, and I didn't see how any of those fellows were gonna get off. Eventually they did get the fire put out, but everything happened so fast. The first time I looked at my watch, it was 12:30. And actually they said that the attack lasted 2 hours, but it seemed like the first time I could really realize that with everything else that was going on and all the activity, that it was 12:30 when I first looked at my watch. But like I say, we were probably one of the luckiest ships of the battle wagons because we were inboard. And right in front of the West Virginia, which was right next to us, was the Oklahoma, which rolled over. And right in back of us was the Arizona, which blew up. And in back of the Arizona was the Nevada. And I watched the Nevada get underway. And I think the captain thought maybe he could get out to sea with it. But I watched a bunch of dive bombers, and they just peeled off. And they were real close before they ever dropped their bombs. And I think he figured that he's never going to make it out of that channel, so he beached it rather than get sunk in the channel and blocked everything else, which was smart of him to do that. But then the California, it was over in the opposite side of Pier in Pearl Harbor, and it got out all right. And the Maryland was inboard of the Oklahoma, so it survived without a lot of damage, some probably similar to us. But after, it took several days to put the fires out, and especially our ship was, like I said, the interior, all the back had been on fire, and they finally got that out, and we had to go back to Bremerton Navy Yard to get repaired. And in order to get our ship out, we were wedged in from the West Virginia. And the only reason it didn't roll over, it was so well tied to the Tennessee that it just settled in the water, and the back end, or the ship kind of came over and pushed against us. So they pushed us tight against that pier. Well, they had to, these are huge concrete piers we were tied up to. They had to dynamite them, blast them out so we could finally get back to the States. And we went back about the latter part of December. And we're back there for several weeks being repaired.
sure.
Then, from then on, we had pretty light duty Port Tennessee. We were backups to Midway, and we were just patrolling in case the Japanese came on. And anyway, they finally decided that the Tennessee was a good enough ship. They took it back into dry dock. And about a year later, we went into dry dock for about 9 months, and they completely remodeled that ship, and they made it look like a brand new ship. The only thing that was left was the turrets on the front, the turrets on the rear, and everything else was cut completely off and rebuilt. Everything in 9 months. Back in those days, it cost $93 million.
Wow.
Which was a lot of money back there.
That's still a lot of money, Don.
Yeah, not compared to what things are now.
Oh, sure.
But, you know, and now compared compared to salaries, and let me just tell you a little bit about salaries before we go on.
Sure.
I started out 21, 36, 54, 60, 72, 84, 96, and when I was chief, I was making 126. Then I did get overseas pay, and then when I got married, I got a little married allowance. I was making $255
A month,
a month.
right.
But that wasn't bad, because Ray talked me into coming back, going to work. He says, not for me, Don, I want you to go work with me. So when I started out, he hired Tony Boxer at the same time he hired me. Tony was our wash rack man. He got $175 a month. I got $185.
Ray wasn't gonna spoil you, was he?
No.
We all know Ray, he was wonderful.
But it took me a long time, I mean, $500 a month, that was several years afterwards. I think when I bought him out, I was only making $600.
Is that right?
And you wouldn't believe it, but I never did take a salary over $1,200 all the time I was in there. Now understand this, if we made it at the end of the year, I got a
Oh, sure.
bonus.
Well, you were the owner.
But, $1,200, that's a lot of money, we could buy pretty well then.
Okay, now, you and I were talking earlier, and when you joined the Navy, tell me about Sterling. You were here in Sterling, and what your dad was doing, and we didn't get that on the tape, but I think that's really important for people to know. What was going on, and what was the year, and why, and what happened to you and you guys that joined them?
Well, yeah, it was, it was just coming off the Depression, things were kind of pulling out. I remember my folks bought a new car, first new car in 1937, and then my dad even bought another one in 1940, about $900. So, but things had been real tough, and back in those days, I remember my dad worked for Great Western Sugar Company, and we were better off than a lot of people were back in coming out of that Depression. But I have two sisters, and mom and dad, and our grocery bill, we'd shop at Adams Drive-In Market, was $30 a month.
$30 a month.
I mean, that's what it cost to feed a family of five back in there. But, and then, of course, that was the days I told you when they had the CCC camps and the boys were making $15 a month. Just to have a job and having someplace to sleep and eat and have some food.
Right.
But, and then, of course, I'm not a Republican, but I do think Roosevelt did kind of get things going a little bit.
Yeah, we had the IRA and WPA
He had
and
some
stuff.
pretty good projects going that helped people, but that's the reason I think a lot of guys, like I said, in my class, several of them joined the Navy, and they joined before me, and the only reason they did because I couldn't get in until I was 18, but.
Now, what year did you graduate from high school?
1940.
1940. And so, and you weren't quite 18 when you graduated?
No, 17.
17.
So I had to wait. I'd already decided since the 7th grade I was gonna join the
Yeah,
Navy.
tell me about that again.
Well, I don't know if you ever knew or heard about some Petersons, but they had been in the Navy, and they came home with bell-bottom trousers. Man, oh man, I love that swagger.
Yeah, sure,
I
right.
decided right there, hey, and now I want to join the Navy, and not only that, I retire in 20 years, see?
Right, okay.
But, and that's the reason I worked so hard to make my rates, and I was lucky, but it's lucky I did, because I ended up saving better than $3,000. I had enough money to buy a brand new car when I got out, it cost me $1,225, and I had enough money for a down payment on the house, which cost me $13,500 for a brand new house. So at times were, even back in 46 when I got out, there were still, times were kind of tough, and I remember that Floyd Smith, you probably know.
Yeah,
him,
Floyd, yeah.
a banker, don't build a new house, Don, things are higher now than they'll ever be. So, bankers don't really know a lot either.
Bankers are not good businessmen.
Yeah.
I can attest to that.
So anyway, I was very fortunate we built that house when we did, because I lived in it 10 years and we sold it for almost double what I paid for it.
Now, Don, just, you told me about when you got out of high school and you were 18, you joined the Navy, you went to boot camp in San Diego, is that correct?
Yeah.
And then after that, how did you get your assignment to the Tennessee? How did that work?
Well, they just had ships that needed the quotas, because they were building up the quotas, and back in those days, they had about 1,600 men aboard a battleship, and they ended up getting the complement up to 2,250 men. So we were just starting. I was one of the probably, later on, we kept bringing more and more men aboard ship. But maybe you want to know a little bit more about what happened after Pearl Harbor, do you?
Sure.
Okay, after I told you about we completely rebuilding the ship, our first engagements, after that we went to Alaska, which turned out to be Kiskin and the Japanese. They were afraid we might end up trying to take Alaska. Well, once the Japanese found out, I think the United States started patrol up there, and when we were up there, they issued us these foul weather gear, real cold, real nice gear, and by then it was only 2 hours about darkness there, 2.5 hours at the most. And we patrolled, and we finally went in and bombarded Kiska, and by that time the Japanese just slipped out, and so there wasn't anybody there. But so that didn't amount to much of that, but they did chase the Japanese back. And then we started at Tarawa, was our first engagement, and what we would do, we would go in, bombard them, try to knock out all the big gun emplacements, and we'd really bombard really hard, and then the troops would go in and land, and that's what they used the Tennessee and a lot of the older battleships for, all the way through there, and all the islands, and like I say, we went to Guam, and that's when we were so close at different times. We were so close to bombarding, we actually had men that were hit with rifle fire aboard ship.
Wow, is that right? You're in that close?
We were in really close. Normally we weren't that close, but at times. And we got hit at Saipan and Tinian by 3 6-inch shells. And it hit, like I say, one of the shells hit right where the 5-inch 25 or 5-inch 38 elevated, and right in the shield that keeps out the salt water. It killed 9 guys, and only 1 guy got out. That was the division officer, and he got medical discharge. So
What happened to him?
well, it just affected him mentally, and they just discharged him. So,
And you said his hair turned white overnight, you told me earlier.
It really did. It's
Wow.
really an experience. And we had quite a few guys killed there. One of my closest friends, that was my second really close buddy that was killed. And then we went on, and after quite a few engagements that we had, probably 8 different islands that we bombarded, and that we sent the Marines in. Usually it was the Marines went in. Then we went to the Philippines. And on the way down to the Philippines, our rudder went out of control. And so we started to make a turn. The captain asked if the fleet wouldn't make a turn with us. For some reason or other, they wouldn't okay it. So we ended up in the California and Tennessee, just came head on, just absolutely head on. And the bows just barely missed, and they scraped. We took out 120 feet of armor plate on the California, and our bow just sunk down quite a bit. But we went on into Philippines, we bombarded Leyte Gulf, and during the Philippine operations, that was the first time that battleships fought battleships since the Battle of Maine. And we happened to have Admiral Oldendorf aboard our ship, who was the fleet commander at that time, and he did the perfect formation across the T, and that's what you want to do, and against the enemy. Now the enemy was coming up, Sarah got straight this way, and we were coming straight across this way, and all of our guns could fire at him, and all they could fire is at us.
Oh.
But I don't think they ever got off too many rounds at us, because we fired 69 rounds off the Tennessee, and everything just disappeared. They just blew them out of the water. We had a lot of
What was that battle called? Do you
Battle
remember?
of Saranac Strait.
Of what
The
strait?
Battle of Saranac Strait.
Farragut Strait.
First time that battleships fought battleships since the Battle of Maine.
Is that right? Wow.
And I think probably the only time since, and probably the last time, because battleships are a thing of the past, I think now. But then after that operation, we went to Okinawa, and that was getting pretty well late in the campaign. And that operation, there was more sailors, Navy personnel killed than there were Army and Marines, because the Japanese kamikaze planes were so bad. And they just pick up on one ship, and they'd pick up on these little destroyers and really blow them all up, you know, really did lots of damage. Well, one time, they decided to attack the Tennessee, and I'll show a picture later. 7 of them dove in right on our bow, and we shot down 6 of them, but the 7th one was hit, but he just kept the plane going toward us, and he went right through, tried to hit the bridge, he missed the bridge, but he went through, I'll show you one of the towers, he went through, went out and exploded, went through a gun bucket, and exploded on our quarterdeck, and it killed quite a few fellows, and that's where my third closest buddy was killed there. He was an ensign at that time, and I followed him up in rank. So, so we were really unfortunate there, but that's about the last damage we had. And shortly after that, well, when they dropped that atomic bomb, it was all over.
Kind of took care of things.
But I tell you one other thing that happened. Everybody was, lots of the little ships were really celebrating, you know, and they're out shooting the guns just like 4th of July. I was up topside and I was watching them. I thought, you know, I was lucky enough to get through this war.
Don't need that.
I'm not going to stand out on this deck and let one of those silly shells come over here. So I went back down. The next day, we had a paper called the Typhoon that would come out. And our regular little newspaper board ship. Several fellows from different ships were killed.
Stuff falling out. So,
Debris falling, yeah.
yeah.
So, but that's what happens, you know, it's.
So how long had you been in the Navy up to that time? So you had been about,
I'd probably been in about 4.5 years, probably.
and all the time,
Almost 5 years, probably.
and all the time you were on the Tennessee.
On the Tennessee. And then, I'll tell you, I was really lucky in one way. After the war, we went to Tokyo. We had, I got to make liberty there to see all the damage. And then we made liberty in Okinawa. And we had surrender ceremonies aboard our ship there. And then after that, we were supposed to go to Philadelphia Navy Yard. Well, when Tennessee went in for remodeling, we were so wide, we had blisters put on the sides so the torpedo hit, it hit on the blisters and blow up before it ever got to our plate.
Okay.
So we were so wide we couldn't get through the Panama Canal. So we got to go to Singapore, then Ceylon, Colombo, and Cape Town, South Africa. And then we were supposed to get to go to Rio de Janeiro, but they were having elections, so we had to bypass that.
Too wild.
But the way it happened to be, we pulled in Philadelphia Navy Yard December 7th, 1945. So I've got this book that starts December 7th, 1941 to December 7th, 1945. Shows all the itinerary, everywhere we were, every date. It shows all the ammunition we fired, how many miles we've traveled, and it has pictures of all the crews.
How many, you were on, okay, and you told me that your contingency of that ship got up to as high about 2,500 people, is that correct?
Yeah, 2,250.
2,200.
2,250.
And when you guys decommissioned in Philadelphia?
Yeah, they put it in mothballs, and so what they did, they covered all these gun buckets with a kind of a cocoon covering, and that didn't last too long because they decided this is going to be another war, they were going to need that ship. So in 1964, I phoned the captain of the Philadelphia Navy Yard and said, I'd like to bring my sons aboard the Tennessee. He said, oh, Mr. Armstrong, he said, I'm sorry, but we sold the Tennessee for scrap. But he says, use this letter And he said, I'm gonna send you a letter, and he says, use that, and he says, you can bring your sons in, and we'll show them all through the Navy Yard, and take them aboard any kind of ship they wanna go aboard. So, that's what happened at the Tennessee.
And then after the Tennessee, what happened to you? Were you then, did you then?
Yeah, oh, and I stayed aboard there until they kept letting men go, and transferring to different ships, till there was down to 22 men, and that's when my enlistment expired. And I got out, I really got out October 1st, even though my enlistment shows that I had 2 months leave coming. So they paid me till December 1st, 1946, but I got out October 1st, 1946.
But all that time you were on active duty and sailing around in that war.
All except the last 6 months in Philadelphia.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
but you were in the hot spots,
yeah.
right? So you were a real hero.
Well, not a hero, but I was fortunate. I was a fortunate sailor that I was at the right place at the right times, as far as I was
And you
concerned.
started out as an ordinary seaman, or what was the original rank you started
Well, you
at?
start out as a premise seaman, and you go, they automatically give you seaman 2nd class. Then you earn seaman 1st class, 3rd class gunner's mate, 2nd class gunner's mate, 1st class gunner's mate, chief, then I was chief permanent appointment when I got out.
You were chief, a permanent chief.
After
Yeah.
1 year, they make you permanent appointment if you haven't fouled up or anything.
Yeah, right.
So,
So did you have the gold stripes and all that stuff? So you had all the
I
big
still
cuts?
have my uniform.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've got I have my old sailor uniforms too. I let Pat Long use them one time for, you want to go party dressed as a sailor.
yeah.
It fit her.
Did they?
I don't think I can get any now. But like I told you a while ago, I weighed 156 after boot camp.
Right.
I don't know, she heard about that part. Did I tell that part on this?
I don't know, tell it over. So
When I first joined, I joined with John Zolli from Holyoke, and he was a real athlete. And he was about 5'10", weighed 180 pounds. And I was 5'11", weighed 130. And anyway, so they didn't give us our uniforms until we finished boot camp. So when we finished, I weighed 156, I gained 26 pounds, and John lost 20, he weighed 160, 4 pounds difference. So, but the Navy was good for me, because then I tell you what, I got this boot leave, and I went all the way up. I got all the way to Denver. I think I had to ride a bus, and then I caught a bus to Rush, Fort Morgan, I can't remember which. And anyway, then I had to hitchhike from then on to get to Sterling. So I got out on the highway that morning, and I was thumbing this way, and I didn't want to look when the car was coming this way, because I didn't want anybody to see me hitchhike. I didn't think it was the best thing to do back in those days, but anyway, curiosity got the best of me, and I turned around. Then I looked, it was my folks heading for Denver looking for me. It was just lucky I got away. That was
Oh, that's great. So you came out of the service as a full chief, good conduct and all that good stuff. Did you get any medals or citations or
Yes.
awards? You probably got a Purple Heart and stuff.
That's why I went, no Purple Heart thing. And that's
Didn't you really? You never, and all that? Wow.
The Navy, we had the Secretary forced on the warship, and he ordered, or maybe it was Admiral Mims, but we had them both aboard, so get mixed up
Right.
real much. But they ordered the Tennessee, the Navy unit combination, and only 2 battleships ever got that combination. The other was the Pennsylvania, which John Gassick happened to be on. And
Who was on it?
John Gassick.
Oh, Johnny Gassick, yeah, sure.
On the Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But, so we did get that word, then we had, I had a lot of different campaign ribbons, I can't tell you what they all are now, but one of them has about 8 stars, you know, and for different.
8 battle
operations.
stars.
They give you a star for every different. And then another thing that's interesting in the Navy, you can't believe how many fellows that have been in the Navy, officers maybe for years, that never had crossed the equator, and or even crossed the 180th meridian. Well, when they crossed the 180th meridian, that's the Golden Dragon, they called it. They didn't have any big ceremonies on that, but on crossing the equator, they did. And our executive officer had never crossed the equator, and he got the treatment. I guess some pictures they did to show you what they did.
Neptune worked him over.
You betcha. But that was, I crossed the equator 2 different times, and 180th ring a couple times too, so.
Yeah, there's,
And then one good thing about it, I got to prove the world was round. Because I left, went this way, and we had to go all the way around.
Yeah.
So I proved the world was round.
now you told me that, how many miles did you
Well,
sail?
I always told my wife it was 235,000, so I was just thumbing through this, trying to get some different statistics, and I noticed it said 185,000 miles that we traveled.
Man, that's still a hell of a lot.
Quite a bit.
And what would that battleship cruise? I mean, when it was out, you were kind
We
of, how
cruised
many
about-
knots?
About 16 to 18 knots. 21 is the fastest we'd go. So we wouldn't cruise for about 16 knots. Maybe 18 if we were in a big rush, but.
Not real speedy, huh?
But then, they tell us that Tennessee had enough wiring to go around the world 3 times. That was wiring the board ship. They had enough electrical power to light a complete city.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And it was fuel, like, it was what, diesel fueled, or how did they fuel it? How was it driven, you know?
well, turbines, just big.
Big turbine.
I suppose it was diesel.
Yeah.
That wasn't my.
That wasn't your area. You were a gunnery person.
Yeah, I was strictly in the gunnery department. My Nevada State had been on those 5-inch 25 guns. But when we went in, we were remodeled, they came out with 5-inch 38s. And they were all, they had like ammunition that automatically come up, conveyors, and the shells and the powder were separate. And they're so much better, faster, and more accurate than the open gun buckets that I was on. And they transferred me down aboard to the lower decks. I'd never go down to the lower deck except to eat and to take a shower. And then I always liked to stay topside. I even slept topside. I got a bunk out. I just liked it. I didn't want to be below deck.
Down in that ship. Huh?
When this old chief, this one I was a second class, or maybe just about to make first class. He said, "Down, we're going to put you down there for 3 months. I want you to get a lot of experience in magazines and conveyors and catapult and ordnance tool room, small arms." And he said, "We're going to bring you right back." So I said, that's fine. I'll go down there and do that. So we got down there and we had like 8 long conveyor belts. And those conveyor belts about this wide, and they had big belts that just run just this way. And they'd be like 4 or 5 car lengths long. So, and we had 8 of those. Well, what happened, where they tied together, they started eating out on each end, and they were really getting bad. So the lieutenant commander in charge of the gunneries asked me, he says, "What can we do about those?" So I made some little brackets, looked just like that, and I put a pin in it and a bushing around that, and I put it on every stanchion all the way up and down. I put a jillion of those things on. I got those belts running just perfect. I didn't have a chance to go back up. He wouldn't let me.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you get out of there. Then you could fix things, couldn't you?
So anyway, I ended up standing down there. And then when they'd have, we'd go
Have some water.
Oh, thank you, I sure need some. You'd have a completely different outlook on everything, and you're down there, well, one thing lucky about it, I can't get hit by all those shrapnel from those shells when those kamikaze planes hit. And then you forget about the torpedoes,
Yeah, right. All the
It's
hot
just-
stuff down there, yeah.
So it's just however you think, but it was interesting. And I'll tell you what, believe it or not, I liked the Navy. I had the perfect attitude because I was so, the war was good for me because it made me advance more ratings quicker, and since I was gonna stay all the time, but I didn't really know I was gonna get married and get out. But, so I had the right attitude. A lot of fellas didn't, you know, I had
Right,
bad
they
attitude. You know,
battle it all the
and I
time.
wait to get out of the Navy.
Yeah, I like
It's a
that.
good experience. Well, I hope that kind of tells you a few of the things, but
Oh, yeah, that's terrific.
I didn't.
Well, I think one of the really things you did is when you were up on that that director in Pearl Harbor, and you were up on top of this, you were really exposed up there on that
Yeah,
ship.
and there were just three of us up there, the Marine captain and the other kid and I, and so we really, see the planes that hit us, where there's high flying planes, they flew right direct over and dropped those bombs. And I forgot to tell you that right around our ship, they found 20 bomb holes, you know, where bombs had hit, missed us, thank goodness.
Wow. Yeah, you were, okay, now, and when did you and Barb get married? Did you get married?
Well, that was March the, I better not forget this,
Well, you-
March the 2nd, 1946.
In 46,
And
and
then
that,
discharged in October 1st, 46.
so you got married right then?
6 months we lived in Philadelphia. I did have a chance to get transferred to Key West, but I'd already paid my first and 6th month rent in advance. And being such a tightwad, I didn't want to lose that 6 months rent.
Key West was probably pretty good duty.
Well, it would have been, but I'd only been there a few months. But we liked it in Philadelphia. We got to go to New York and Atlantic City and Ocean City, and we had a lot of fun.
That's good.
People would look at my Colorado license plate and holler, "Take it back to the sticks."
But they, hey, Rube.
I had a lot of chances to sell that car too, because, you know, brand new car.
Yeah, cars are hard to get.
Oh, yeah, boy, I was lucky. Ray was nice to me. Look at that car cost. That's $25.
Plus 25 bucks, yeah, he's got. You know, that's his father-in-law, Ray Smith. I don't know if you ever knew him or not.
Oh, he was a really good guy.
Yeah, Ray was a wonderful
Yeah,
fellow.
He was really good. I tell you, he really treated me well and did a lot of good stuff for me. Once when.
Okay. Well, now show Sherry some of your,
I think you,
stuff's so hard.
What year would this have been?
what year is that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that was probably 1941, probably.
Where's your,
It's black, just like it was
Yeah.
night, you know, for a while, when all that debris came over.
show them, Don, and, you know, those pictures, show them that direct area
Oh,
where
okay.
you were up in the
I
ship.
will. Now, this picture, they actually got from the Japanese. See, this is Ford Island, and here's where the battleships were. And see, that's the Tennessee is right here. And the West Virginia, Arizona, Nevada, Oklahoma, and the director is this director right here. And I was a talker in that director right there, because that's a Tennessee. This picture is taken several days after Pearl Harbor.
He was up on this thing here,
Uh, uh,
directing,
My.
direct-